This week we're going to be studying internet broadcasting. And first we'd like to just go back to our radio unit briefly. We've traced broadcasting distribution from its earliest terrestrial systems through cable and finally by satellite, and we're now in the midst of its next huge change. And broadcasting is migrating from traditional radio, television, and cable channels to the internet, either as streaming programs, which we all know and love these days, or selectable video on an internet location, typically a website. And we're watching the content on everything from our cell phones to television screens to programming on the sides of buildings. So let's think back to Guglielmo Marconi, back when he started trying to broadcast radio. And with the increase in internet connection speeds, advances in technology, and the total number of people online, and the decrease in connection costs, it's now common to find traditional broadcasting content accessible freely and legally over the internet. Here's early cable antenna television going up, and this is really how cable TV started, with simple antennas. Satellite television really starts with transmitting by antenna located at an uplink frequency. So you have to uplink your programming and then downlink it, goes up to a satellite, and then downlink it at another location. Visual media today is everywhere. It's on the sides of buildings, as you can see in these large cities. It's on your phone, and it's basically anywhere you might be looking at any given moment. So what's the Gutenberg shift? The change that visual communication will bring society to a Gutenberg shift. A gentleman named Kevin Kelly, the founding executive editor of Wired magazine, called this change that visual communication will bring to society a Gutenberg shift. So what is he really talking about? You remember, let me take you back to the 15th century, about 500 years ago. We're in the late Middle Ages. It's been about 1,000 years since the collapse of the Roman Empire in 500 AD. And Western Europe has been a society made up of nobles, serfs, and priests, and the Roman Catholic Church is the only unifying institution with tremendous power. So what remains of ancient knowledge and writings of Greece and Rome are available only in Latin, the language of the church. So 70 years later, the Black Plague had wiped out between a third and 60% of Europe's population in 3 years, and there were barely enough people to maintain the farms, market, crafts necessary for community survival. Wages went up, and a middle class made up of craftsmen, independent farmers, and merchants was emerging with leisure time to pursue education. Gutenberg came up with woodblock, after woodblock printing, Gutenberg came up with type from alloy made of lead, tin, and antimony. And to create these lead types, Gutenberg used a special matrix enabling the quick and precise molding of new type blocks from a uniform template. And he also used an oil-based ink, which didn't run like water-based inks used by most Europeans at the time. And within 50 or 60 years of his designing the printing press using this lead type, the entire Bible or classical canon had been reprinted in vernacular languages, meaning the languages of the people who spoke those languages in certain countries, and circulated throughout Europe. So Latin was replaced by the languages of each area, undermining the authority of Catholic Rome. And in time, the spreading of the written word led to European nationalism and the Protestant Revolution. But when I talk about what Kevin Kelly said, he was saying that the Gutenberg shift is that visuality is becoming as ubiquitous as the written word. The moving image is becoming part of our basic literacy. As you notice, some type here, we're now going through that Gutenberg shift. So just remember what Kevin Kelly said: visuality is becoming as ubiquitous as the written word. the moving image is becoming part of our basic literacy. So early origins of the internet. The internet and its increasingly visual content is a profound game changer whose consequences we're just beginning to understand. So the history of the internet. Let's start back with the abacus briefly. The oldest surviving counting board is the Salamis tablet used by the Babylonians around 300 BC. And incidentally, around 900 AD, the Aztec peoples invented a device similar to the abacus, and it used corn kernels threaded through wooden frames. In Aztec abacus would have had 7 beads by 13 columns. Many different plans and contraptions were built to So here, for example, a view through the back of a calculator Pascal invented in 1642 and a set of John Napier's calculating tables from around 1680. Here's an early mechanical calculator. The computations were done by a series of gears. So look at this mechanical calculator here. Charles Babbage, born in 1791 in London, designed the most elaborate and ambitious attempts to create a calculator. He was an English mathematician and mechanical engineer who originated the concept of a programmable computer. It was an astonishingly complex device for the 19th century, an entirely mechanical computer that eventually led to more complex designs. His first calculator was composed of 25,000 parts, weighed 15 tons, and stood 8 feet high. It was never completed. He later designed an improved version, and that version was actually not built until modern times in 1991. Using Babbage's plans and a 19th century manufacturing tolerance, it performed its first calculation at the London Science Museum, returning results to 31 digits, far more than the average modern pocket calculator. The next step forward was IBM's development of card sorting machines, which came into increasing use after World War II. Punch cards have been used to control looms in the 19th century and for computation in the early 20th. They became commonplace after the war with the warning, "Do not fold, staple, or mutilate," which also became the battle cry of Berkeley radicals during the 1960s. It was the military that drove the next computer breakthroughs, using continued evolution in the vacuum tube, that had transformed radio and television. The ENIAC was the first vacuum tube computer built by the military to calculate ballistic artillery trajectories quickly. ENIAC stands for Electronic Numeral Integrator and Computer. It was also engaged in the attempt to break German codes. ENIAC could be programmed to perform complex sequences of operations, but the task of taking a problem and mapping it into a machine was complex and could take weeks. After the program was figured out on paper, the process of getting the program into ENIAC by manipulating its switches and cables took additional days, and this was followed by a period of verification and debugging. You can see how large the ENIAC was here. The next computer I'd like to talk about is the UNIVAC, and that stands for the Universal Automatic Computer. Or UNIVAC was the next project of the ENIAC team, Dr. Presper Eckert and Dr. John Mauchly. They first found their client in the United States Census Bureau. The Bureau needed a new computer to deal with the exploding U.S. population, the beginning of the famous baby boom. And they were given a $300,000 deposit for the research into a new computer called the UNIVAC. Here's the UNIVAC being operated. UNIVAC with CBS cameras. In 1952, the UNIVAC predicted Eisenhower's victory against Adlai Stevenson, with only 5% of the whole vote counted. So let's talk about the space race. Then came Sputnik. launched by the Soviet Union in 1957, the crisis for the U.S. because everyone was afraid that the Soviet Union was moving ahead of the United States in science and technology. Sputnik was really a series of Soviet satellites, first launched in October 4th of 1957. The first artificial satellite to be placed in orbit was about the size of a beach ball. It took about 98 minutes to orbit the Earth, and it learned about Earth's atmosphere by studying radio signals from the satellite. So, President Eisenhower created DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, in 1958 as a result of Sputnik. And since that time, DARPA's mission has been to assure the U.S. maintains a lead in applying state-of-the-art technology for military capabilities and to prevent technological surprise from our adversaries. So let's talk a little bit about ARPANET, Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. It was conceptually completed in 1968 and it was operational by the end of 1969. It was a computer within a computer, an interface message processor that would translate the computer language of different computers into a common format so that they could talk to each other. 4 computers were first connected at the original ARPANET. They were at UCLA, Stanford, UC Santa Barbara, and the University of Utah. As the network expanded, different models of computers were connected, creating compatibility problems. Here's ARPANET in 1971, 2 years later. More computers, as you can see, are being connected. And another year, in 1972, it connected the East Coast to the West Coast. And by 1974, it was even larger. And look here at 1977. Military origins of ARPANET are crucial because the system was designed to survive a nuclear attack. It's been called the equivalent of the nuclear bomb shelter. It created a network of geographically separated computers of all different makes that could exchange information. So let's talk about the centralized and decentralized versions and why we prefer one over the other. Okay. A highly standardized military organization is pretty much centralized. The Pentagon was built during World War II to coordinate all military actions, but the problem in the nuclear age was that a single atomic bomb could take out the Pentagon and render the military almost helpless above small units. Another alternative is decentralized. There were multiple centers spread across the country, but again, it was vulnerable to nuclear attacks. So what's the best option? A distributed solution here. There are no centers at all. You can send a message from any computer. It searches for the best way to navigate to its destination. Even if a third of the grid is destroyed, a message can still get sent to a surviving destination. And now you can see where the idea of the net came from, or the internet. It looks like a fishing net here. To communicate the increased traffic and number of different computers, Vinton Cerf, as shown here, led the team that developed a better set of protocols called TCP, or Transmission Control Protocol, /IP Internet Protocol, designed in 1982. So Vinton Cerf, as seen here, gets the credit and the title of Father of the Internet for leading the team that came up with the essential Internet protocols, TCP and IP. And interestingly enough, here's his vanity license plate, Surf's Up, on his Virginia Jaguar. So moving forward, these protocols are Vinton Cerf's computer gateways, TCP and IP, in which Vinton Cerf gets to be called the father of the Internet. So that's how the basic architecture the Internet was put into place. It took a different mindset to put the Internet into the hands of ordinary users. Stay tuned for part 2 of our Internet chapter.